Well, a grand jury issued a superseding indictment against former President Donald Trump, and this new indictment includes the same 4 criminal charges in regards to the election interference case, but prosecutors say the indictment implements the Supreme Court's instructions in the presidential immunity decision that came down about a month ago. Joining us now is Chris Tritico, our legal analyst. Chris, always a pleasure discussing this topic with you. Great insight. But for beginners here, what is a superseding indictment?
A superseding indictment is really just a replacement indictment. It amends the indictment that was already there. In a federal case, especially a complicated federal case, we expect to have superseding indictments. The last one I tried, we were on our 3rd superseding indictment when we finally went to trial.
So now, what do you think, how strong is this case when you look at it? Because it's the same 4 charges, but it kind of implements the guidelines from the previous ruling on the Supreme Court.
So what Jack Smith did was, in looking at the Supreme Court ruling, he removed every reference to President Trump being the president and in his actions as president in the indictment. So where he said the president ordered the Justice Department to take action, that's out. Anything like that he removed from the indictment, and the only thing that's in there now is actions that Donald Trump took as a candidate, and he's trying to separate the presidential acts from acts as a candidate, and only indicting him for acts as a candidate, and he's going to run at it that way. He's not acting as the president, he's acting as a candidate for president, and that's where we're going to see how this indictment works this way.
You know, someone's not in law. That sounds like an impossible decision to try to separate acts as president and a candidate. That's going to be difficult.
With the president of the United States, it's going to be a new question that'll have to go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, because the president is always the president. When a candidate who's already in office, like the governor, when he goes to a campaign event, he has to pay for it. He has to go private. When the president goes somewhere, he goes on Air Force One, even to a campaign event, because the ruling is he's always the president of the United States. And so Donald Trump is going to appeal this, saying you cannot separate me from being the president of the United States. And you can't separate it this way. And the court is going to have to rule, can you separate the sitting president from acts he's doing as a candidate or the president? And the U.S. Supreme Court is going to have to rule on this again.
Historic on so many fronts.
Yes.
So what happens next with this? Are we kicking this can down the road? How long do you think this is going to take, and what do you think is next on the Trump team?
Well, so they've got a hearing coming up, and they're going to have to file new briefs in the trial court. The trial court will have to issue a ruling. That'll go to the appellate court, and then eventually back to the U.S. Supreme Court. And so this is going to take another couple of years before you find out if this indictment is going to stand and Donald Trump can go to trial, or if the U.S. Supreme Court's going to throw it out again.
Chris Tritico, always a pleasure giving us that insight. And that next hearing he mentioned is coming up on September 5th. We'll be keeping a close eye on that one.